My landlord asked, "Why did you say you were moving out?" My ex had impersonated me. The call came at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday, jarring me awake from the deepest sleep I'd had in weeks. "Hey, this is Marcus from Riverside Property Management," the voice said when I finally fumbled my phone to my ear. "I just wanted to follow up about your move-out notice. You said October 15th, right? That's next week, so I need to schedule the final walkthrough." I sat up so fast my vision went spotty. "I'm sorry, what move-out notice? The one you submitted last month? September 12th? Look, I know you've been a great tenant for 2 years, but if you're having second thoughts about breaking the lease, we need to discuss the penalty fees." My hand started shaking. I hadn't submitted any notice. I loved my little one-bedroom near campus. It was affordable, quiet, and exactly 17 minutes from the psychology building where I was grinding through my master's thesis. "Marcus, I never gave you any notice. I'm not moving anywhere." The silence stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. "Finally, that's weird. I have the email right here. Sent from your Gmail account at 2:47 a.m. Says you got a job opportunity in Denver and need to terminate your lease effective October 15th. Denver." The word hit me like a slap. My ex-boyfriend Jake had always talked about moving to Denver, some fantasy about starting fresh in the mountains, opening a craft brewery, leaving behind what he called all the mediocre people in this college town. Including me, apparently. "Can you forward me that email?" I asked, already knowing what I'd find. "Sure, sending it now." I opened my laptop with trembling fingers. The email was there in my sent folder, sent from my actual Gmail account. The writing style was mine, casual but polite, the way I always communicated with Marcus. It even referenced the broken garbage disposal from last spring and thanked him for being super understanding about late rent that one time in March, details only someone close to me would know. Only Jake would know. My stomach dropped as the pieces started clicking together. The job interview at Denver Children's Hospital that got mysteriously canceled last week, the HR person had sounded confused when I called back, mentioning something about receiving an email saying I was no longer interested. The strange text from my current boyfriend David 3 days ago, asking why I was being so cold lately when I hadn't been cold at all. I scrolled through my sent folder with growing horror. There it was, an email to Denver Children's Hospital from September 18th, professionally declining the interview I'd spent weeks preparing for. Another one to the psychology clinic downtown, withdrawing my application for their research assistant position. And then I found the worst one. Sent to David at 3:22 a.m. last Thursday, "I think we should take a break. This isn't working for me anymore. I need space to figure things out. Please don't contact me for a while." No wonder he'd been distant. He thought I'd broken up with him via email like some heartless coward. Jake. My ex-boyfriend of 6 months, who'd called me pathetic and going nowhere when I refused to drop out of grad school to follow him to whatever dead-end town he'd fixated on that week. Jake, who still had my passwords because I'd been too trusting, too naive to change them after our messy breakup. Jake was systematically destroying my life, and he was doing it so carefully, so methodically, that I almost had to admire the sick precision of it. I called David immediately, my heart hammering as the phone rang. He answered on the 4th ring, his voice flat and distant. "Hey. David, I need to explain something. That email you got last Thursday, I didn't send it." "What do you mean you didn't send it?" "It came from your account. Someone else sent it. My ex has been impersonating me, sending emails from my account. I just found out this morning when my landlord called about a move-out notice I never submitted." The silence stretched so long I had to check if the call was still connected. "That's..." David's voice was careful, like he was talking to someone having a breakdown. "That's a pretty elaborate story, Sarah. Look, if you wanted to break up, you could have just told me in person instead of..." "I have proof," I interrupted. "Give me 5 minutes. I'm coming over." I threw on yesterday's clothes and drove to David's apartment in record time, my laptop clutched against my chest. He answered the door in his scrubs. He was pulling a double shift at the hospital today. I remembered with a pang of guilt for dragging him into this mess. "Look," I said, opening my laptop on his kitchen counter. September 12th, fake move-out notice to my landlord. September 18th, declining that hospital job interview I was excited about. September 20th, withdrawing from the clinic position. And October 3rd, the email to you. David leaned over my shoulder, reading. I could smell his familiar cologne mixed with hospital antiseptic. "They're all sent in the middle of the night," he said quietly. "Between 2 and 4 a.m. Exactly. When have you ever known me to be awake at 3 a.m. sending professional emails? I'm in bed by 11 p.m. every night like the boring grad student I am." His expression was shifting from skepticism to concern. "Your ex did this? Jake? Has to be. He's the only one who knows these details about my life. The garbage disposal issue with my landlord, that time I was late on rent because my stipend got delayed, even the way I write emails." I scrolled through more messages. "Look at this one," he used the phrase circling back 3 times. "I hate corporate speak. I would never write like that." David was quiet for a long moment, studying the screen. "This is insane. This is like identity theft. Harassment. Can't you call the police?" "I'm going to. But first I need to figure out how deep this goes." I opened my email search and typed in Jake's name. Nothing recent. Then I tried searching for keywords: Denver, opportunity, withdraw, decline. My blood turned to ice. There were 17 emails I hadn't found yet. 17 ways Jake had been methodically dismantling my life for the past month. A withdrawal from a conference I was supposed to present at in November. Canceling my appointment with my thesis advisor, Dr. Martinez must think I'm completely unreliable. An email to my graduate program coordinator saying I was reassessing my academic goals and might need to take a leave of absence. "Oh my God," I whispered. "He's trying to make me drop out of school. He's literally trying to destroy my entire future." David's hand found my shoulder. "We're calling the police. Right now." But even as I nodded, a horrible realization was creeping in. Jake was smart, manipulative and cruel, but smart. He'd been careful to use my actual email account, to write in my voice, to reference real details from my life. Would the police even believe me? Or would they think I was just a girl having a breakdown, making up conspiracy theories about her ex-boyfriend? The police station smelled like burnt coffee and disinfectant. Officer Rodriguez, a tired-looking woman in her 40s, listened to my story with a kind of polite attention that made my stomach sink. I printed out screenshots of all the fake emails, organized them chronologically in a folder like the obsessive grad student I was. So your ex-boyfriend has been sending emails from your account, she said, flipping through my evidence. Do you have proof that he's the one doing it? Who else would it be? He's the only one who knows these personal details about my life. But do you have direct evidence? Security camera footage, witnesses, maybe messages where he admits to it? I felt David shift beside me in the plastic chair. We've been here for 45 minutes already. I mean, no, but... Here's the problem, Miss Chin. Technically, if someone has your password and you gave it to them voluntarily, it's not unauthorized access. It's more like letting someone borrow your car and then getting mad when they drive somewhere you don't like. But I didn't give him permission to impersonate me. I didn't know he still had my passwords. Officer Rodriguez nodded sympathetically. I understand your frustration. But proving criminal impersonation requires showing intent to defraud or cause specific financial harm. Has he stolen money? Opened credit cards in your name? He's costing me job opportunities. The research position I withdrew from paid $18 an hour. The conference presentation could have led to networking opportunities, maybe a PhD program recommendation. That's harder to quantify in court. She handed back my folder. My advice? Change all your passwords immediately. Document everything going forward. If he continues, we can look into harassment charges. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as her words sank in. David's jaw was clenched tight. So he can just get away with this? I didn't say that. But right now, you need more evidence. We drove back to my apartment in silence. I felt hollow, defeated. Jake had been so calculated, so careful. Of course he'd stay just on the legal side of the line. My phone buzzed with a text from my thesis advisor. Sarah, got your email about reassessing your academic goals. Let's talk tomorrow at 2 p.m. This seems sudden. Another buzz. My mom, honey, I got a weird email from you at 4 a.m. saying you might be taking a break from school. Call me. Then another. My graduate program coordinator, please confirm you want to withdraw from Dr. Peterson's advanced statistics course. This will put you behind on degree requirements. He's still doing it, I whispered, showing David the messages. Even today. He's watching me somehow, escalating because he knows I'm onto him. David pulled over in a CVS parking lot. Log into your email. Right now. Check if there's new stuff. My hands shook as I opened Gmail on my phone. 3 new sent messages from the past hour. One to my department's financial aid office, asking about temporary hardship withdrawal procedures. Another to my undergraduate mentor at Berkeley, saying I was struggling with the academic workload and might not be cut out for graduate school after all. The third one made my blood freeze. It was sent to Dr. Martinez, my thesis advisor, at 3:47 p.m. 20 minutes ago. I need to confess something that's been weighing on me. The data in my thesis research has some integrity issues that I haven't disclosed. I think I need to restart the entire project, or possibly withdraw from the program altogether. I'm too ashamed to discuss this in person. Please let me know the proper procedures for academic misconduct self-reporting. Oh my god. My voice came out as a croak. He's trying to get me kicked out for academic dishonesty. Dr. Martinez is going to think I fabricated my research data. David was already dialing. We're going back to the police station. This is escalation, this is harassment. And he's actively sabotaging your career right now, in real time. But as I stared at the screen, I realized something else. Jake wasn't just destroying my life randomly. There was a pattern, a timeline. He was building towards something bigger. And I was running out of time to stop him. I spent the next 3 hours in a frantic damage control spiral, calling every single person and institution Jake had contacted. Dr. Martinez's voicemail box was full. The financial aid office had already flagged my account for review pending withdrawal request. My undergraduate mentor, Professor Kim, answered on the second ring. Sarah? I have to say, your email really concerned me. You were one of my strongest students. Are you getting the support you need? Professor Kim, I didn't send that email. My ex-boyfriend has been impersonating me, sending fake messages from my account. Even as I said it, I could hear how insane it sounded. The pause stretched uncomfortably long. That's quite serious, Sarah. Have you spoken to someone about this? Maybe the counseling center? She thought I was having a breakdown. I could hear it in her voice, that careful, therapeutic tone people use when they think you're losing your grip on reality. I can prove it, I said desperately. The emails were sent at 3 and 4 a.m. Check the timestamps. Honey, grad school stress can manifest in a lot of ways. Sometimes we do things we don't remember doing, especially when we're sleep deprived. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. David found me sitting on my kitchen floor 20 minutes later, laptop open, scrolling obsessively through my email history. Any luck with damage control? They all think I'm crazy, I whispered. Professor Kim thinks I'm having some kind of psychotic break. Dr. Martinez hasn't called back. And the financial aid office won't discuss anything over the phone. I have to come in person tomorrow with identification to verify my identity. He sat down beside me on the linoleum. What about changing your passwords? I did. Gmail, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. I showed him my screen. But look at this, he had time to download my entire email history before I locked him out. Every contact, every conversation, every professional relationship I built over the past 2 years. David leaned closer. What do you mean? Look at the timestamps on these fake emails. They reference specific conversations I've had recently. The one to Dr. Martinez mentions the integrity issues, that's referencing a discussion we had last week about statistical methodology. Jake wasn't there for that conversation. He couldn't know about it unless. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Unless he's been reading my emails for months. Not just sending fake ones, reading every single message I've received and sent. I opened my Gmail settings with trembling fingers and clicked on Account Access. There it was, buried in the security logs, unusual login activity from an IP address in Riverside, Jake's neighborhood. Not just from the past month, but going back to July. 3 weeks after our breakup. He's been reading everything, I breathed. Every email from my advisor, every job application, every message between us, David. He knows about your work schedule, that conference you're presenting at next month, the problems you've been having with your roommate. David's face went pale. That's why he knew to send that breakup email right after you'd mentioned wanting to have the talk about moving in together. I thought you'd gotten cold feet. He's been watching us. Studying us. I scrolled through more login records. Look, he logs in every Tuesday and Friday around 2 a.m., right after his bartending shifts end. He's been treating my entire life like his personal entertainment. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hope you're enjoying the chaos, Sarah. This is just the beginning. You destroyed my life 6 months ago, and now I'm returning the favor. Every opportunity, every relationship, every dream you have, I'm going to take it all away, piece by piece, just like you did to me. Sweet dreams. David grabbed the phone. We're screenshotting this. This is direct harassment, direct admission. But I was already thinking 3 steps ahead, the way Jake had trained me to by turning my life into a chess game. He sent it from a burner number. Probably a prepaid phone he'll throw away. And look at the language, he's not actually admitting to the email impersonation. A good lawyer could argue this is just angry ranting from an ex. Another buzz. This time from my own number, a text sent to David. I can't handle you being mad at me anymore. I think I'm going to hurt myself tonight. Don't try to find me. Jesus Christ, David whispered. He's trying to make you look suicidal. If I hadn't been sitting right here. The full scope of Jake's plan crystallized in my mind with terrifying clarity. He wasn't just destroying my current life, he was systematically building a narrative of mental instability that would discredit anything I said about him. The fake suicide text was still glowing on David's phone when my laptop chimed with a new email notification. Not sent from my account this time, sent to it. From Dr. Patricia Martinez P. Martinez at university.edu. Subject, urgent, meeting tomorrow cancelled. Time, 6:23 p.m. Sarah. I received your concerning email this afternoon regarding data integrity issues in your thesis research. Given the serious nature of these allegations and your apparent distress, I'm required to report this to the Graduate Academic Standards Committee immediately. I've also forwarded your message to Dr. Reynolds in Student Counseling Services. Please contact his office first thing tomorrow morning. Our meeting is cancelled until this matter is formally reviewed. Dr. Martinez. No. I was already dialing Dr. Martinez's office number, but it went straight to voicemail. 6:24 p.m. She probably just left for the day. David was reading over my shoulder. Can you email her back? Explain what's happening? And say what? Sorry, my psychotic ex-boyfriend is impersonating me and trying to destroy my academic career? Right after she got an email where I confessed to research misconduct? I laughed, but it came out strangled. She's probably already contacted the department head. Academic integrity violations can get you expelled, David. Not just suspended, completely kicked out of the program. My phone rang. Mom's contact photo filled the screen, the one from last Christmas where she's wearing that ridiculous reindeer sweater. Hi Mom, I managed. Honey, I've been worried sick since I got your email. Are you really thinking about leaving school? You've worked so hard for this. What email? But I already knew. The one you sent this morning. About how grad school isn't what you expected, how you're thinking about moving back home to reassess your life goals. Sarah, you sounded so defeated. This isn't like you. I put the phone on speaker so David could hear. Mom, what time was that email sent? Let me check. 5:47 a.m. Sweetheart, I know the pressure is enormous, but I was asleep at 5:47 a.m. I didn't send you any email. The silence stretched uncomfortably. What do you mean? Someone has been impersonating me, sending fake emails from my account. My ex-boyfriend Jake. He's been systematically sabotaging my life for weeks. Oh honey. Mom's voice took on that gentle, worried tone I remembered from childhood fevers. Have you been sleeping enough? I know grad school stress can cause paranoia. I'm not paranoid. The words came out sharper than I intended. Mom, I have proof. Login records, timestamps, everything. Okay. Maybe you should come home for a few days. Take a break, get some perspective. I hung up. Even my own mother thought I was losing my mind. David's hand found mine. Hey. I believe you. I was here when you got that fake breakup email, remember? I saw your face. No one's that good at acting. My laptop chimed again. Another email to my account, this one from the Graduate Academic Standards Committee, scheduling a preliminary hearing for Thursday at 10 a.m. to discuss self-reported research integrity concerns. Thursday, I whispered. That's 3 days from now. What happens at the hearing? They review the allegations, interview me, examine my research data. I pulled up my thesis files, scanning through months of carefully collected survey responses and statistical analyses. If they find evidence of misconduct, fabricated data, plagiarism, anything like that, it's an automatic expulsion. No appeals, no second chances. But your research is legitimate, right? Of course it is. But Jake knows enough about my project to make the fake confession sound believable. He used to listen to me complain about statistical problems, sample size issues, weird outlier responses that didn't fit my hypothesis. I scrolled through my data files with growing dread. What if he's been planning this for weeks? What if he's figured out a way to actually plant false data in my files? David leaned forward. Can he do that remotely? If he's been reading my emails for months, he knows I back up everything to Google Drive. He might still have access to shared folders we created when we were dating. I was already logging into Drive, checking folder permissions with mounting horror. There it was. A shared folder called Sarah's School Stuff that I'd created in February when Jake was helping me organize research papers. Last modified, October 8th, 11:43 p.m. Yesterday. He's been in my thesis files, I breathed. Look at this modification history. He's accessed my data spreadsheets 6 times in the past 2 weeks. I opened my main dataset, the culmination of 8 months of research on graduate student anxiety and academic performance. 847 survey responses, perfectly organized, meticulously cleaned. Column Z hadn't existed before. It was labeled flag_duplicate and marked 127 responses as potentially fraudulent, the exact number that would invalidate my sample size and destroy my statistical significance. Jake hadn't just been reading my emails. He'd been quietly sabotaging my actual research data, setting up evidence to support his fake confession of academic misconduct. In 3 days, I'd walk into that hearing with corrupted data and a confession email I never sent, trying to convince a panel of professors that my ex-boyfriend was framing me for academic fraud. And I was starting to realize that Jake was always 3 moves ahead of me. The discovery about my corrupted research data sent me into a spiral of paranoid checking. I spent the next hour going through every digital account, every shared folder, every online service I'd ever connected to Jake during our 8 months together. Spotify, he'd been tracking my listening habits, probably timing his attacks for when my recently played showed the depressing indie music I only listened to during anxiety spirals. Netflix, still logged into our shared account, monitoring what I watched. He'd know I'd been binge-watching legal procedurals last weekend, research for dealing with him, though I'd been too embarrassed to admit it to David. Google Photos, the shared album from our trip to Portland last spring was still active. But worse, he'd been uploading screenshots. Screenshots of my emails, my text conversations, even photos of my apartment taken through the window from the parking lot across the street. David, I whispered, showing him my phone. He's been stalking me physically too. The photos were timestamped over the past 3 weeks. My kitchen window at 7:23 a.m. last Tuesday, I remembered standing there in my pajamas, coffee in hand, completely unaware I was being watched. My car in the university parking lot. Me walking into the psychology building, backpack slung over my shoulder, looking tired and stressed. The most recent photo was from this afternoon at 4:15 p.m. Me and David sitting in his car outside the CVS, heads bent over my phone, clearly in crisis mode. The angle suggested Jake had been following us, waiting in the parking lot while we discovered his latest sabotage. We need a restraining order, David said immediately. This is stalking, harassment, everything the police need to take this seriously. But my phone was already buzzing with a call from Dr. Reynolds at Student Counseling Services. My stomach dropped as I remembered Dr. Martinez mentioning she'd forwarded Jake's fake confession email to the counseling center. Sarah Chen? This is Dr. Reynolds. I received some concerning communication from Dr. Martinez about your well-being. Dr. Reynolds, I didn't send that email about research misconduct. Someone has been impersonating me, sending fake messages from my account. The pause was telling. I see. Sarah, I'd like to schedule an emergency session tomorrow morning. When someone reports potential academic fraud while expressing emotional distress, we take that very seriously. I'm not emotionally distressed, well, I am now, but only because my ex-boyfriend is systematically destroying my life. I have proof he's been accessing my accounts, corrupting my research data. Sarah. His voice was gentle but firm. I'm scheduling you for 9 a.m. tomorrow. This isn't optional. If you don't attend, I'll have to recommend a temporary academic hold on your enrollment pending psychological evaluation. He hung up before I could argue. I stared at my phone in disbelief. Academic hold? David asked. It means they suspend you from classes, freeze your stipend, basically kick you out until you can prove you're mentally stable. My voice cracked. Jake's not just trying to get me expelled for academic fraud. He's building a case that I'm having a psychotic break. As if summoned by my words, another text arrived from the unknown number. Enjoying your meetings tomorrow? Dr. Reynolds at 9, Academic Standards Committee at 10. Don't worry, I'll make sure everyone knows how unstable you've been lately. Your friends are so concerned about you. Friends. My blood ran cold as I realized Jake's next target. I opened Facebook for the first time in days and found 17 messages from classmates and colleagues, all expressing worried confusion about my recent behavior. Melissa from my cohort, hey, got your weird message about dropping out. Are you okay? Tom from the research lab, dude, your email about falsifying data was intense. Want to talk? Dr. Peterson from Advanced Statistics, Sarah, your request to audit the class instead of taking it for credit seems like a step backward academically. Each message was a response to emails I'd never sent, conversations I'd never initiated. Jake had been systematically contacting everyone in my professional network, spreading a narrative of academic dishonesty, emotional instability, and self-sabotage. The most devastating message was from my study group, 5 other graduate students I'd worked with for over a year. It was a group chat where I apparently wasn't included anymore. Preview text visible. I feel bad for Sarah, but if she really did fabricate research data like she confessed to Dr. Martinez. Jake had turned my closest allies into witnesses for his case against my mental stability and academic integrity. And tomorrow morning, I'd walk into Dr. Reynolds' office looking exactly like someone having a paranoid breakdown, desperately claiming my ex-boyfriend was orchestrating an elaborate conspiracy against me. I barely slept that night, lying awake calculating how many hours I had left before everything collapsed completely. At 3:17 a.m., I gave up on sleep and started printing every piece of evidence I could find, screenshots of login records, timestamps of fake emails, Jake's threatening texts, even the photos he'd taken of me without my knowledge. By sunrise, I had 3 manila folders organized with the obsessive precision that had gotten me into graduate school in the first place. One for the police, one for Dr. Reynolds, and one for the Academic Standards Committee. Each folder contained the same desperate plea, I am not crazy, and I am not a fraud. David picked me up at 8:30 a.m. with coffee and the kind of encouraging smile people give terminal patients. You look like you're going to trial, he said, eyeing my black slacks and blazer. I basically am. The Student Counseling Center occupied the basement of the psychology building, all beige walls and motivational posters that felt deeply ironic given my current situation. Dr. Reynolds was exactly what I'd expected, kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, the sort of gentle demeanor that made you want to confess your deepest fears. Thank you for coming, Sarah. I know this is a difficult time. I placed my folder on his desk. Dr. Reynolds, before we start, I need you to look at this evidence. My ex-boyfriend has been impersonating me for weeks. The email about research misconduct was fabricated. He didn't open the folder. Sarah, I'd like to focus on how you're feeling right now. Dr. Martinez mentioned that you seemed distressed about your thesis work. Because someone else sent that email. My voice came out sharper than intended, and I watched him make a note on his legal pad. Probably something about elevated agitation or defensive presentation. I understand you believe someone else is responsible. But let's talk about the pressure you've been under. Graduate school can create enormous stress, and sometimes our minds develop explanations for feelings we can't otherwise process. He thought I was delusional. I could see it in the way he leaned forward slightly, the practiced empathy of someone trained to handle students in crisis. Look at the timestamps, I said, opening the folder myself and spreading screenshots across his coffee table. These emails were sent at 2 and 3 a.m. I have my Fitbit sleep data showing I was in deep sleep during every single incident. Dr. Reynolds glanced at the papers politely. Sleep tracking isn't always accurate. And many people don't remember getting up at night, especially during periods of high stress or sleep deprivation. I wanted to scream. Instead, I pulled out my phone and showed him the surveillance photos Jake had uploaded to our shared Google album. Did I take these pictures of myself? From outside my own apartment? For the first time, his expression shifted slightly. He studied the photos more carefully, noting the angles, the timestamps, the clear evidence of external surveillance. These are concerning, he admitted. Have you reported this to campus security? I filed a police report yesterday. They said I need more evidence of criminal intent. I leaned forward. Dr. Reynolds, I know how this looks. I know I seem like a paranoid graduate student having a breakdown. But someone is systematically destroying my life, and they're counting on exactly this reaction, on everyone thinking I'm unstable. He set down the photos and looked at me directly. Sarah, even if someone is harassing you, that doesn't negate the academic integrity concerns. The email to Dr. Martinez contains specific details about your research methodology that suggest intimate knowledge of your work. My heart sank. Because he's been reading my emails for months. He knows everything about my thesis because he's been spying on every conversation I've had with my advisor. That's a very sophisticated conspiracy theory. It's not a theory. It's documentation. I pulled out the Google Drive access logs, highlighting Jake's IP address in yellow marker. Look at these modification dates. He's been editing my actual research files, planting evidence to support his fake confession. Dr. Reynolds studied the logs for several long minutes. I held my breath, hoping that maybe, finally, someone would see the pattern I'd been desperately trying to prove. I'm going to make some calls, he said finally. And I'm changing my recommendation to Dr. Martinez. Instead of an academic hold, I think we need a full investigation. The relief I felt at Dr. Reynolds' words lasted exactly 43 minutes, until I walked into the Academic Standards Committee hearing and saw Jake sitting in the hallway outside the conference room. He looked up from his phone with that familiar smirk, the one that used to be charming when we were dating and now made my skin crawl. He was wearing his good jeans and the navy button-down I bought him for job interviews, playing the part of a concerned ex-boyfriend. What the hell are you doing here? I whispered, clutching my evidence folder against my chest. Committee asked me to provide character testimony, he said casually, like we were discussing the weather. Apparently when your ex-girlfriend confesses to academic fraud and starts having paranoid delusions about being impersonated, people want to know about her mental health history. My blood turned to ice. What mental health history? Jake's smile widened. The anxiety attacks you had last spring during comprehensive exams. That time you called me crying at 2 a.m. because you were convinced Dr. Martinez was going to fail you. How you stopped eating for 3 days when you thought your thesis proposal was rejected. He tilted his head with mock sympathy. I told him I was worried you might be having another breakdown. Each word was a calculated blow. Those moments of vulnerability I'd shared with him during our relationship, my worst fears and insecurities, were now being weaponized against me in an official academic hearing. Dr. Reynolds called you? I managed to ask. Actually, Dr. Martinez reached out yesterday. Wanted to know if I'd noticed any concerning behavior before our breakup. I was so helpful, told them all about your perfectionist tendencies, how you'd sometimes obsess over minor details for hours, convinced that everything was falling apart. The conference room door opened and Professor Williams, the committee chair, peered out. Ms. Chen? We're ready for you. I walked into the hearing on unsteady legs, Jake's words echoing in my head. The committee consisted of 3 faculty members I barely knew, all sitting behind a polished oak table with my thick academic file spread before them. Dr. Martinez sat to the side, avoiding eye contact. Ms. Chen, Professor Williams began, we've reviewed the concerning email you sent to Dr. Martinez regarding data integrity issues in your thesis research. We've also received testimony from Dr. Reynolds about your current emotional state and from Mr. Jake Morrison about your behavioral patterns. Jake Morrison. He'd given them his full name, presented himself as a credible witness instead of the stalking ex-boyfriend he actually was. Before we examine your research data, Professor Williams continued, we'd like you to explain the circumstances that led to your confession of academic misconduct. I placed my evidence folder on the table with trembling hands. I didn't send that confession email. My ex-boyfriend has been impersonating me for weeks, accessing my accounts, corrupting my research files. My voice sounded thin and desperate even to my own ears. Professor Chen, no relation, despite the shared surname, leaned forward with barely concealed skepticism. Ms. Chen, these are very serious allegations. Do you have concrete proof of this impersonation? Yes. I opened the folder and began spreading out screenshots, login records, and timestamps. Jake had my passwords from when we were dating. Look at these Gmail access logs, his IP address shows up repeatedly at times when I was asleep. The committee members exchanged glances. Professor Williams picked up one of the screenshots, studying it with the expression of someone trying to solve a puzzle they didn't particularly want to understand. Even assuming someone else sent that email, he said carefully, we still need to examine your actual research data for signs of the misconduct described in the confession. My stomach dropped as I realized Jake's masterstroke. The fake confession wasn't meant to prove I was guilty, it was meant to force the committee to look closely at data he'd already corrupted. They would find exactly what he wanted them to find, evidence of research misconduct that I couldn't explain without sounding even more paranoid. There are some irregularities in my files, I admitted, watching their expressions shift. But only because he's been editing them remotely. The suspicious data points were added recently, after he gained access to my Google Drive. Professor Williams made a note on his legal pad. Ms. Chen, you're asking us to believe that your ex-boyfriend orchestrated an elaborate months-long conspiracy to frame you for academic fraud. When he put it like that, it sounded absolutely insane. I know how it sounds, I said quietly. But it's the truth. Dr. Martinez finally spoke up from her corner chair, her voice careful and professional. The committee has also reviewed your recent academic communications, Ms. Chen. Beyond the confession email, we've received concerning messages you sent to other faculty members. My blood ran cold. What other messages? Professor Williams consulted his notes. Yesterday at 4:23 p.m., you sent Dr. Peterson an email claiming that several students in your cohort have been collaborating inappropriately on assignments. At 6:15 p.m., you contacted Dean Morrison, no relation to Mr. Jake Morrison, alleging that Dr. Martinez has been showing favoritism in thesis evaluations. The room started spinning. I gripped the edge of the table to steady myself. I never sent those emails. Check the timestamps, I was in the police station yesterday afternoon, then at my boyfriend's apartment. David can verify. Ms. Chen, Professor Chen interrupted gently, we understand you've been under tremendous stress. But these emails were sent from your verified university account during normal business hours. I fumbled for my phone, opening Gmail with shaking fingers. There they were in my sent folder, emails I'd never written, accusing my classmates of cheating and my advisor of corruption. The writing style was mine, complete with my tendency to overexplain and use semicolons incorrectly. Jake had been studying my communication patterns for months. He changed his strategy, I whispered, more to myself than to the committee. When I changed my passwords yesterday, he must have already prepared these. He's not just making me look dishonest, he's making me look vindictive. The 3 committee members were watching me with expressions I recognized from clinical psychology textbooks. The way professionals observe someone experiencing a psychotic break. Professor Williams cleared his throat. Ms. Chen, Mr. Morrison mentioned that you've made similar accusations before. During your relationship, you apparently accused him of reading your private messages and manipulating your social media accounts. My heart stopped. That conversation had happened during one of our worst fights in April, when Jake's behavior had become increasingly controlling. I'd found flirty messages on his phone from other women and confronted him, only to discover later that my own Facebook had been used to send hostile messages to female friends he didn't like. When I'd accused him of using my account, he'd turned it around masterfully, convincing me I was being paranoid and jealous. That's not, I started, then stopped. How can I explain that Jake had gaslighted me then without sounding like I was making excuses now? He has a pattern of manipulating digital communications. That's exactly what he did during our relationship. So you've accused Mr. Morrison of this behavior before? Professor Chen asked, making another note. I realized I was walking into Jake's trap. Every word I said to defend myself was confirming their impression of me as someone with a history of paranoid accusations against the same person. Jake had spent months building a narrative of my instability, and now he was presenting himself as a long-suffering ex who tried to help me through previous episodes. We'd like to call Mr. Morrison in for his testimony, Professor Williams announced. 5 minutes later, Jake walked into the conference room with perfect composure. He nodded respectfully to each committee member and sat down across from me with the demeanor of someone reluctantly doing his civic duty. Mr. Morrison, Professor Williams began, you dated Ms. Chen for approximately 8 months last year. During that time, did you observe any behavior that might be relevant to our current concerns? Jake's performance was flawless. He spoke with measured concern about my tendency toward conspiracy thinking and how I'd become increasingly convinced that people were working against me during stressful periods. He mentioned specific incidents, times I'd been convinced professors were grading me unfairly or classmates were sabotaging my work, twisting moments of normal graduate school anxiety into evidence of deeper psychological problems. I tried to be supportive, he said with practiced sincerity, but Sarah would sometimes become fixated on these ideas that people were manipulating her life from behind the scenes. As he spoke, I watched the committee members' expressions solidify into certainty. They weren't hearing testimony from my stalker, they were hearing a concerned ex-boyfriend confirming their worst suspicions about my mental state. Jake had won before the hearing even began. The hearing ended with me suspended pending further psychological evaluation and investigation of research integrity concerns. I walked out of that conference room knowing that Jake had orchestrated every detail perfectly, the timing, the witnesses, even the way he'd positioned himself as the reluctant truth-teller forced to expose my pattern of paranoid behavior. But I'd caught something the committee missed. When Jake mentioned my supposed obsession with professors grading me unfairly, he referenced a specific incident with Dr. Patterson's methods in clinical research course. The problem was, I'd never taken that course. Dr. Patterson taught it for the first time this semester, starting in September, 2 months after Jake and I broke up. He was ad-libbing parts of his testimony, adding fictional details to make his story more convincing. Which meant he'd made mistakes elsewhere too. David was waiting in his car outside the psychology building, engine running. I climbed into the passenger seat and immediately pulled out my notebook, scribbling down everything I could remember from Jake's testimony before the details faded. How bad? David asked, studying my face. Suspended. But David, he screwed up. I showed him my notes. He mentioned courses I never took, professors I've never had. He was so confident in his performance that he got sloppy with the facts. David's eyes lit up. So we can prove he was lying. Better than that. I think I know how to prove everything. I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through my university email. Jake's been accessing my accounts for months, right? Reading my messages to learn details about my life. But university email systems keep detailed server logs, not just login times, but which specific messages were accessed and when. I found the IT services number and dialed immediately. Hi, this is Sarah Chen, student ID SC2847. I need to request detailed access logs for my university email account. I think my account has been compromised. The IT technician, Marcus, sounded bored until I mentioned potential unauthorized access spanning several months. Oh, that's definitely something we need to investigate. How soon can you come in? Right now. The IT services office was tucked away in the basement of the library, all humming servers and the smell of stale coffee. Marcus was younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with the pallid complexion of someone who lived in fluorescent lighting. Okay, Sarah, let's see what we're dealing with. He pulled up my account on his screen, fingers flying across the keyboard. You said you suspect unauthorized access starting in July? July 15th or later. That's about 3 weeks after I changed my relationship status to single. Marcus's eyebrows shot up as data cascaded across his monitor. Whoa. Yeah, you definitely had unauthorized access. Look at this, someone with IP address 192.168.45.127 has been logging into your account regularly since July 22nd. Usually between 2 and 4 a.m. Can you trace that IP address? Already did. It's registered to Riverside Gardens apartment complex, unit 247. He swiveled his monitor so I could see. Is that familiar? My heart raced. That's my ex-boyfriend's address. Marcus, can you see which specific emails they accessed? Oh yeah, we log everything. His fingers danced across the keyboard again. Looks like they were particularly interested in messages to and from Dr. Martinez, Dr. Reynolds, your academic advisor. Also spent a lot of time reading conversations between you and. He squinted at the screen. Someone named David Chen. Wait, are you related? Different David, I said quickly. Can you print all of this? Absolutely. But Sarah, you need to file a formal complaint with campus security. This level of unauthorized access, reading months of private email, accessing academic communications, this is serious stuff. As the printer churned out page after page of server logs, I felt the first real surge of hope I'd had in days. Jake thought he'd been invisible, accessing my emails in the middle of the night when no one would notice. But every single unauthorized login, every message he'd read, every file he'd accessed was documented with forensic precision. There's more, Marcus said, pulling up another screen. Whoever accessed your account also forwarded 23 emails to an external Gmail address. Want to see which ones? The list made my stomach churn. Jake had forwarded every sensitive conversation I'd had over the past 3 months, discussions with Dr. Martinez about thesis methodology, messages with David about our relationship problems, even emails with my parents about graduate school stress. He built a complete dossier of my personal and academic life. Marcus, I need copies of everything. Every log, every access message, every forwarded email. This is going to be like 50 pages of documentation. Perfect. By 2:30 p.m., I had a stack of evidence that would make any prosecutor salivate. Not just screenshots and timestamps, but official university server logs proving unauthorized access from Jake's specific IP address. Documentation showing he'd read confidential academic communications, forwarded private messages to external accounts, and systematically gathered information over a period of months. David was pacing in the library lobby when I emerged from the IT cave, clutching my evidence folder like a life preserver. Please tell me you found something useful, he said. I found everything. I showed him the server logs, pointing to highlighted entries. Jake accessed my email 47 times without authorization. He read 312 confidential messages, including communications with faculty that he had no right to see. And David, he forwarded emails containing your personal information to his own account. David's face darkened. What kind of personal information? Messages where you mentioned your work schedule, your social security number for that background check, even details about your family. I flipped through more pages. He's been building profiles on everyone in my life, not just me. We drove straight to the police station. Marcus's documentation spread across the backseat of David's car like a legal brief. This time, Officer Rodriguez took one look at the university server logs and called over Detective Park, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in cybercrime. This is unauthorized computer access, identity theft, and stalking, Detective Park said after reviewing the evidence. The university logs give us everything we need, specific IP address, documented access to protected information, systematic pattern over months. When can you bring in the suspect for questioning? The question caught me off guard. I don't know where he is right now. That's fine. We'll pick him up. Detective Park was already making notes. Sarah, I need you to document every instance of impersonation you can remember, fake emails sent from your account, any financial impact, damaged relationships. This isn't just harassment anymore. With this level of premeditation and the involvement of university systems, we're looking at felony charges. As I sat in that police station, finally being taken seriously, I realized Jake had made one crucial miscalculation. He'd been so focused on discrediting me personally that he'd overlooked the digital trail he was leaving. Every login, every accessed email, every piece of information he'd stolen was documented by university servers he'd never thought to hide from. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't 3 steps behind him. I was finally catching up. The arrest warrant for Jake was issued at 4:47 p.m. on Thursday. Detective Park called me personally to let me know they'd picked him up at the brewery where he worked, right in the middle of his shift. I felt a savage satisfaction imagining him led away in handcuffs while his coworkers watched. We found additional evidence when we searched his apartment, Detective Park said. 3 burner phones, printed screenshots of your personal conversations, and a notebook with what appears to be a timeline of his harassment activities. Sarah, this goes deeper than we initially thought. I was sitting in David's kitchen, surrounded by the organized chaos of my evidence folders, when she called. The relief I'd felt at Jake's arrest was already being replaced by a gnawing anxiety about what other damage he might have done. What kind of timeline? I asked. Detailed plans for escalating harassment, including target dates for specific sabotage activities. He had October 18th circled in red with final phase written next to it. That's tomorrow. My blood went cold. What happens tomorrow? We're not sure yet. The notebook is in code, mostly initials and abbreviations. But Sarah, he's been planning something bigger than the academic sabotage. There are references to your parents' address in Portland, David's work schedule at the hospital, even your landlord's personal information. David leaned over to listen as Detective Park continued. We're holding him on the computer crimes charges, but I need you to think carefully. Has he mentioned anything about your family? Any threats that seemed focused on a specific date? October 18th. I racked my brain trying to remember if that date meant something to Jake, or to us, or to anyone in my life. Then it hit me like a physical blow. That's the day my parents are driving down from Portland, I whispered. They're coming to visit this weekend for my birthday. Jake knows because I mentioned it in emails he's been reading for months. David's face went pale. What would you want with your parents? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Honey, we got the strangest email from you this morning. You asked us not to come this weekend because you're dealing with some personal issues and need space. Are you sure you're okay? My hand started shaking as I showed the message to David. He's still doing it. Even from jail, somehow he's still sending emails from my account. Detective Park heard the panic in my voice. Sarah, what's wrong? My parents just got a fake email from my account, telling them to cancel their visit. But Jake's in custody. How is he still accessing my email? Hold on. I heard typing in the background. We confiscated his phone and laptop, but... Sarah, did he have access to any other devices? Tablets, work computers, maybe accounts logged in at friends' houses? The realization hit me with sickening clarity. The library computers on campus. Students can stay logged in for hours if they're doing research. And there's a 24-hour computer lab in the engineering building that Jake used to study in sometimes. We need to check those locations immediately. In the meantime, I'm sending officers to your parents' house in Portland as a precautionary measure. After Detective Park hung up, I immediately called my mother back. She answered on the first ring, her voice tight with worry. Sarah, what's going on? First the strange email, now you're calling back so quickly. Mom, whatever you do, don't open the door for anyone claiming to be from me or about me. Jake, my ex-boyfriend, has been impersonating me for weeks. The police have arrested him, but we think he might have accomplices or automated systems still running. The silence stretched uncomfortably long. Accomplices? Sarah, this sounds very... I know how it sounds. But Mom, Detective Park from the University Police is sending officers to your house right now to explain everything. Jake had your address, your phone numbers, detailed information about your visit this weekend. He had our address? How would he get our address? I closed my eyes, remembering all the personal details I'd shared with Jake during our relationship. My parents' names, their jobs at Portland Community College, the house they'd owned for 15 years. Information that seemed harmless when you trusted someone, but became weapons in the wrong hands. I gave it to him months ago, back when we were dating. I never thought. My voice cracked. Mom, he's been planning something for tomorrow. We don't know what, but the police found evidence that he's been targeting our entire family. David squeezed my hand as my mother's voice took on the fierce protective tone I remembered from childhood. We're not going anywhere until this is resolved. And Sarah? We're driving down tonight instead of tomorrow morning. If this person knows our schedule, we're changing it. By 6 p.m., my parents were on the road from Portland, and I was discovering just how deep Jake's digital infiltration had gone. Detective Park had found 3 more locations where Jake had maintained active login sessions to my accounts, 2 campus computer labs and, horrifyingly, the public library branch near my apartment where I sometimes studied. The timestamps show he was accessing your email as recently as 2:47 p.m. today, Detective Park explained over speakerphone. That's 3 hours after we arrested him. He must have set up automated scripts or scheduled sends. David looked up from his laptop where he'd been helping me change every password I'd ever created. What's an automated script? Basically, he could have programmed emails to send automatically at specific times, I said, my computer science minor finally proving useful in the worst possible way. If he knew my parents were coming this weekend, he could have scheduled that cancellation email days or even weeks ago. My phone buzzed with another call, Dr. Martinez. My stomach clenched as I answered. Sarah, I owe you an enormous apology, she said without preamble. Detective Park just finished explaining the situation to the Academic Standards Committee. We're reversing your suspension immediately, and I've contacted Dean Morrison to explain that you were the victim of an elaborate harassment campaign. The relief was overwhelming, but it felt fragile. What about the corrupted research data? IT Services is working to restore your files from clean backup versions. Apparently, your ex-boyfriend was quite sophisticated. He modified data in ways designed to be discovered during committee review, but he couldn't access the university's automated backup servers. I sank into David's couch, finally allowing myself to believe that my academic career might survive this. Dr. Martinez, I'm so sorry you got dragged into this. The fake emails he sent from my account. Sarah, you have nothing to apologize for. You were systematically victimized by someone who clearly studied your communication patterns and professional relationships. Her voice was warm with the kind of mentor support I desperately needed 3 days ago. Focus on your safety right now. Your thesis defense can wait. After she hung up, David showed me his laptop screen. I've been going through your social media accounts. Look at this, Jake's been systematically unfriending people from your Facebook, unconnecting from your LinkedIn contacts, even unfollowing accounts on Instagram that he thought were bad influences. The list was staggering. Over the past month, Jake had quietly isolated me from dozens of professional and personal connections. Former classmates from undergrad, colleagues from conferences, even distant family members who might have served as support systems. He was cutting off my escape routes, I realized. Making sure I had fewer people to turn to when everything started falling apart. My phone rang again, this time an unknown Portland number. My heart stopped until I heard my father's voice. Sarah, we're about 2 hours out from your apartment. The police officers came by the house and explained what's been happening. His voice was tight with controlled anger. Honey, why didn't you call us when this started? Because I thought I was going crazy, Dad. Everyone kept telling me I was paranoid, that I was having some kind of breakdown. The detective showed us printouts of the server logs. Sarah, this isn't paranoia. This is criminal stalking. I heard my mother's voice in the background, asking if I was okay. We're staying through the weekend, maybe longer. And we're looking into hiring you a lawyer. A lawyer. The word hadn't even occurred to me, but now it seemed obvious. Jake hadn't just committed crimes, he'd caused quantifiable damages to my career, my relationships, my mental health. The officers also mentioned something about Jake having detailed information about David's work schedule, Dad continued. Son, are you there? David leaned closer to the phone. Yes, sir, I'm here. The detective thinks Jake might have been planning to target you as well. Something about your shifts at the hospital, your route home from work. They want you both to stay somewhere else tonight, just as a precaution. As we packed overnight bags and prepared to relocate to my parents' hotel room, I found myself wondering what Jake's final phase had actually entailed. The notebook Detective Park mentioned contained plans targeting not just me, but everyone I cared about. My parents, David, even my academic relationships. Jake hadn't just been trying to destroy my life, he'd been systematically mapping everyone in it, looking for the perfect pressure points to cause maximum damage. And tomorrow was supposed to be the culmination of months of meticulous planning. The hotel room felt like a war bunker by Friday evening. My parents had driven straight through from Portland, arriving with a kind of grim determination I hadn't seen since my grandfather's funeral. Dad immediately started making lists, lawyer referrals, security measures, people to contact, while Mom unpacked enough groceries to survive a siege. Detective Park arrived at 7:15 p.m. with an update that made my blood run cold. We found Jake's final phase plan, she said, spreading photocopied notebook pages across the hotel room desk. It's more sophisticated than we initially realized. The pages were covered in Jake's neat handwriting, organized with the methodical precision of someone planning a military operation. October 18th, today, was marked with detailed timestamps and specific actions. 3 p.m. Parents arrive, discover Sarah's email about academic probation, Detective Park read aloud. 4:30 p.m. David receives Sarah's breakup message citing family pressure. 6 p.m. Landlord gets Sarah's frantic call about needing to break lease immediately due to family emergency. David leaned forward. He was going to blow up her entire life in one afternoon. It gets worse. Detective Park flipped to another page. Jake had researched your parents' financial information, Mr. and Mrs. Chin. He planned to send emails from Sarah's account requesting emergency money transfers. Apparently you'd mentioned helping with student loans in some of your messages to her. Mom's face went pale. How much money? $15,000, wired to an account he'd set up using Sarah's identity. The request email was already written, scheduled to send at 8 p.m. tonight after he assumed your family would be in crisis mode from all the other revelations. I stared at the notebook pages in horror. Jake hadn't just been trying to destroy my relationships, he'd been setting up an elaborate financial fraud that would have devastated my parents' retirement savings. The beautiful part of his plan, Detective Park continued grimly, was that every action was designed to create maximum chaos while making Sarah look increasingly unstable. Frantic calls to the landlord, desperate emails to parents, sudden breakup messages. By tomorrow morning, everyone in her life would have thought she was having a complete psychological breakdown. Dad was studying the timeline with the analytical mind that had made him a successful accountant for 30 years. What about David's work schedule? Why did Jake need that information? We think he was planning to show up at the hospital during David's overnight shift, claiming to be concerned about Sarah's mental health. He'd already researched which psychiatric hold procedures your hospital uses. Apparently he was going to request a welfare check, claiming Sarah had been sending him concerning messages about harming herself. The room went dead silent. David's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. A psychiatric hold, I whispered. He was going to have me involuntarily committed. Based on evidence of erratic behavior that he'd spent weeks creating, Detective Park confirmed. Fake emails showing academic misconduct, financial desperation, sudden abandonment of relationships. By the time you were released from psychiatric evaluation, your academic career would be over, your family relationships destroyed, your finances compromised. My mother's voice was dangerously quiet. How long would something like that have taken to resolve? Months, maybe years. And that's assuming Sarah could prove she hadn't actually sent any of the incriminating communications. Detective Park closed the notebook. Jake Morrison didn't just want to hurt your daughter, he wanted to erase her entire identity and rebuild it as someone fundamentally damaged. I felt David's hand find mine as the full scope of Jake's plan sank in. He'd been playing a game of psychological chess for months, moving pieces I didn't even know were on the board. And today was supposed to be checkmate. So what happens now? I asked. Detective Park smiled grimly. Now Jake Morrison discovers that federal prosecutors take identity theft very seriously. Especially when it involves financial fraud and interstate communications. The federal prosecutor's office called at 8:23 a.m. Saturday morning while I was eating Hotel Continental breakfast with the mechanical precision of someone still in shock. Agent Patricia Valdez introduced herself as the lead investigator on Jake's case, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made me sit up straighter even over the phone. Ms. Chen, we've completed our initial review of the evidence Detective Park provided. Mr. Morrison is facing federal charges that carry significant prison time, wire fraud, computer fraud and abuse, identity theft, and interstate stalking. But I need to ask you about something we found in his apartment. My parents and David all leaned closer as I put the phone on speaker. What did you find? A detailed financial portfolio with your social security number, credit reports from all 3 bureaus, and applications for 7 different credit cards in your name. 3 of those applications were approved. Are you aware that you currently have $23,000 in outstanding credit card debt? The hotel room spun around me. I don't have any credit cards except my student visa with a $2,000 limit. Mr. Morrison opened accounts with American Express, Chase, and Bank of America using your identity. The cards were delivered to a P.O. box he rented under your name. Based on the purchase history, he's been using them since early September, high-end electronics, cash advances, even a $4,800 deposit on an apartment lease in Denver. David's face went ashen. Denver. He was actually planning to move there using money stolen in her name. Agent Valdez continued reading from what sounded like a thick file. There's more. He opened a checking account at Portland Federal Credit Union. Apparently he researched banks in your parents' area and submitted a fraudulent student loan application claiming financial hardship. The loan officer there received very convincing documentation about your academic struggles and family financial crisis. My father's hands clenched into fists. How much? $55,000, approved pending final transcript verification. If your university hadn't flagged your account due to Detective Park's investigation, that money would have been disbursed Monday morning. The scope of Jake's financial crime was breathtaking. He hadn't just been destroying my current life, he'd been methodically stealing my financial future, my credit rating, even my ability to continue in graduate school. Agent Valdez, I managed to say, how do we fix this? My credit report must be completely destroyed. That's actually why I'm calling. The Federal Trade Commission has a specialized unit for identity theft victims. They can freeze your credit, dispute the fraudulent accounts, and provide documentation that you were the victim of a federal crime. It's a process, but we've seen complete credit restoration in cases like yours. Mom leaned toward the phone. How long does that typically take? 6 to 12 months for complete resolution. But Ms. Chen, there's something else. We found evidence that Mr. Morrison has done this before. 2 other women in California have similar patterns of harassment and financial fraud tied to his previous addresses. We're coordinating with prosecutors there. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I wasn't Jake's first victim, I was just the most recent in what appeared to be a pattern of systematic destruction targeting women who'd rejected him. The California cases never went to trial because the victims couldn't prove the perpetrator's identity, Agent Valdez continued. Your evidence, particularly the university server logs, gives us the strongest case we've ever had for this type of systematic identity theft. David squeezed my hand. So he's definitely going to prison? Based on the federal charges alone, we're looking at 15 to 20 years. The interstate nature of the crimes, the sophisticated planning, and the financial damages put this in the most serious category of identity theft prosecution. After Agent Valdez hung up, we sat in stunned silence processing the magnitude of what Jake had attempted. He hadn't just been trying to hurt me emotionally, he'd been executing a comprehensive identity theft scheme designed to leave me financially ruined and academically destroyed while he started a new life in Colorado using money stolen in my name. The hotel room phone rang, startling us all. Detective Park's voice was tense when I answered. Sarah, we have a problem. Jake made bail. The words hit me like ice water. What do you mean he made bail? Agent Valdez said he was facing federal charges. His family hired an expensive lawyer who argued he wasn't a flight risk, Detective Park said grimly. Posted bond an hour ago. Sarah, we have unmarked units watching his apartment and the hotel, but I need you to know he's back on the street. My hand started shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. After everything, the evidence, the federal investigation, the systematic documentation of months of harassment, Jake was free to continue his final phase. David was already pulling up a news app on his phone. There, he said, showing me the screen. Local man arrested for elaborate identity theft scheme targeting ex-girlfriend. It made the university paper and the city news website. I read the article with growing satisfaction. Jake's full name, his mugshot, details about the charges. His employer was quoted saying they'd terminated him immediately upon learning of his arrest. Even better, someone had posted the article to Facebook, where it was being shared rapidly through our mutual social circles. At least everyone will know the truth now, Mom said, reading over my shoulder. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations, Sarah. You destroyed my entire life. Hope you're proud of yourself. Before I could respond, another message appeared. Check your email. I have one final gift for you. Detective Park was still on the line when I opened my Gmail with trembling fingers. The message was sent from Jake's personal account at 2:17 p.m. 23 minutes ago. Sarah's friends and family, the email began. It was sent to a massive distribution list that included my parents, David, Dr. Martinez, my entire graduate cohort, and dozens of other contacts he'd harvested from months of reading my messages. I need to tell you the truth about what Sarah has been doing to me for the past 6 months. She's been systematically harassing me since our breakup, creating fake evidence to frame me for crimes I never committed. The server logs and digital evidence she claims to have are fabricated. Sarah has been having a psychological breakdown and has fixated on me as the cause of her academic failures. I've tried to help her, even testifying about her mental health struggles to university officials, but she's now convinced police to arrest me based on her delusions. Please get her professional help before she hurts herself or someone else. Jake. The email was a masterpiece of manipulation, written in Jake's sincere, concerned tone. Without context, it sounded entirely plausible, a worried ex-boyfriend trying to protect everyone from his mentally unstable former girlfriend. He's still trying to gaslight me, I breathed. Even after being arrested, even with federal charges pending, he's still trying to make me look crazy. But as I scrolled through the responses already flooding my inbox, I realized Jake had made a fatal miscalculation. Dr. Martinez replied first. Jake, Agent Valdez from the FBI has already briefed our entire department on your systematic identity theft. Your lies won't work anymore. My graduate cohort group chat lit up with messages of support. Sarah, we saw the news article. We know Jake is trying to manipulate us. Even my undergraduate mentor Professor Kim, who I thought believed Jake's academic misconduct story, sent a private reply. Sarah, I'm so sorry I doubted you. The federal investigation makes everything clear. Please let me know how I can help. David was grinning as he read the responses over my shoulder. He just sent a detailed confession to 50 people who already know he's a federal criminal. This isn't manipulation, it's evidence. Detective Park's voice crackled through the phone. Sarah, forward me that email immediately. Jake just violated his bail conditions by contacting you directly. We can have him back in custody within an hour. 20 minutes later, my phone rang with the most satisfying call I'd ever received. Ms. Chen, this is Agent Valdez. Jake Morrison is back in federal custody, this time without the possibility of bail. His email this afternoon violated multiple restraining order provisions and constituted additional harassment charges. 6 months later, I defended my thesis to a packed conference room that included Dr. Martinez, my parents, David, and even Detective Park. My research on graduate student anxiety and academic performance had evolved to include a section on psychological harassment and institutional response, partly therapeutic, partly academic revenge against Jake's attempt to destroy my scholarly work. Jake pleaded guilty to 17 federal charges in exchange for a reduced sentence of 12 years in federal prison. The restitution order requires him to pay $47,000 in damages, though Agent Valdez warned me I shouldn't expect to see much of that money. More importantly, my case became the foundation for new university policies on digital harassment and identity protection. The Saracen protocol now requires immediate IT investigation whenever students report suspected account compromise, and campus police receive specialized training on cyberstalking cases. David proposed 3 weeks after my thesis defense, joking that if we could survive Jake Morrison, we could survive anything. He was right. I still change my passwords religiously every month, and I'll probably never fully trust that my digital communications are private. But Jake's systematic campaign to erase my identity ultimately backfired. It forced me to become stronger, more vigilant, and absolutely certain of who I am. My landlord never did ask why I said I was moving out. Marcus from property management sent flowers to my thesis defense.